Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming back to another episode of Declan's Autism Podcast. Today, I thought I'd really spend some time talking about a deeper dive into what we've done. And while I've talked about it in previous episodes, I think that's all part of the journey that got us here. And really what I'm hoping to impart the knowledge and the things that we have done that maybe either have worked out or haven't, and to you, and hope that it helps you as you're starting to navigate on your own pathway and carve out your journey for your own child. So in my first episode, I talked a lot about living in denial, which we were. And then once we got that formal diagnosis in black and white, it was really, we couldn't make excuses any longer. We had to accept the fact that our child was on the spectrum and go forward from there. I also want to share that as I was navigating that journey, I also lost both of my parents 4 months apart. So the emotional baggage that I was carrying was tremendous. And it really set me back a bit, certainly. I remember walking into developmental peds at MUSC in Charleston, and because I felt guilty because I had been taking time to grieve and I had been taking time to couldn't really just come up with my new life plan without my parents. And I walked in there and I was feeling so guilty because I had put Declan's progress really on the back burner for a little bit. I kind of shelved it so that I could work on some stuff that I was dealing with. And that felt terrible. And so, the mom guilt is real. And so I was beating myself up over the fact that I hadn't filled out this huge packet of paperwork for Declan. And I just walked in there a pile of mush. And thank goodness they were so kind and so wonderful. And I told them what had happened, and I'm crying. And the practice manager was like, "We will get you in. It's okay." And she just had realized that I had been through so much that I just needed some kindness and some grace, and she gave it to me. And I was so grateful. And at this point too, I was also thinking, okay, developmental peds is our answer. They are going to be the ones to really help us and to put us on the right path. And so they got us in. To her credit, she got us in. I appreciated that so much. Deck was evaluated. It was very obvious that he was on the spectrum to them as well. So beyond just the Charleston County school diagnosis, we now had a formal diagnosis from developmental pediatrics. And so by the time we got in for his second evaluation, because it's a two-parter, I think the first was a Zoom with just really a call with Tim and I. And then the second part was an in-person meeting. And by this point, we had been in speech, we had been in OT, with really very little change, if any. I mean, to be frank. And I'm going to come back to this, but I'm just going to say, I do think speech therapists at this point, when they are engaging with a child who has nonverbal autism, they have the same tools in their toolkit that they use for kids with speech impediments, speech delays, lisps, those types of things. And a nonverbal kiddo is so, so different. And now knowing what I know and believing what I believe in this hemisphere brain imbalance, that speech therapist, regardless of how phenomenal she was at her job, I think she was never going to make progress with Declan. And obviously I didn't know that at the time, but that's what we believe now. And same for OT. I mean, I didn't even know what OT was, right? They were just like, you should have him evaluated. Okay, I thought he would pass with flying colors. And then when we got the report that he basically failed every category, I mean, my husband and I were like, were they talking about Declan? I mean, we were just like, that was where we were at. We were so, autism and all the legs and arms that come with autism was so far from our reality. But nonetheless, by the time we had our second meeting with the child psychologist at MUSC, I had already signed us up for MERT treatment in Miami. So MERT is magnetic e-resonance technology. And I was pregnant with our third, and I was sitting waiting for my gestational diabetes test, which, as moms know, that takes forever. And so I was just researching and researching and researching, what I still do in my spare time, but really, really did in my spare time back then. And this was November of 2021, or November of 2021. So right before Thanksgiving, I found MERT. And I was sitting in my doctor's office and I'm scrolling and I'm reading different articles, and I came across this video about the show The Doctors, which I had never seen. I think Travis Stork is his name. And they were featuring this thing called MERT and the potential benefits that it had on children with autism. So I'm watching this, and now I start crying in the office as I'm waiting, because it was parents, specifically moms, talking about the benefits that their children saw with MERT and after doing it. And so, of course, I was like, we're doing this. And I texted to my husband and I said, you got to watch this video. What do you think? And by the time I got home, I already found out there was a brain treatment center in Miami. We had lived in Miami for 10 years, just outside of it. So we still had friends down there. And so I was like, I'm going to take Declan. It was 7 weeks, I want to say, a 7-week program. You have treatment once a day. They hit 2 sections of your brain, the front and the back, for 5 seconds. I think it was 17 minutes on the front, 17 minutes on the back, and using this like big paddle. And so I was like, this is what we're doing. And this is the next stop on our journey. And, my husband, to his credit, is a saint and just knew that there was probably no stopping me. So we had the Zoom call with the neurologist, and that was it. We were set to go. And so I think January 28th or 27th, I drove down to Florida with Declan by myself. We stayed with a girlfriend of mine, and the next day he had his first EEG. We talked about what the treatment schedule was going to be. I had also, prior to that, because we had met with because we had met with our developmental pediatrician and they were recommending ABA, I also engaged an ABA provider down in Florida, because I knew that I still had to work while we were doing this, first of all, in order to pay for all of this stuff, right? And I needed a place for Declan, and I didn't want to get a babysitter. I really wanted to start engaging his mind. And I thought ABA is the right place. So anyhow, I found a facility. We met with them as soon as we got down there. We had already agreed upon the hours and things like that. But I mean, I just think back now and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I made those choices. And again, all operating under fear and through fear, and just being so scared that I was running out of time, that I had to act immediately, and that I was really being a bad mom if I didn't do all of these things. And again, now knowing what I know, I just wish I could do things differently, but I can't, and that's okay. It's all part of the path. But it's, again, the point of this podcast is certainly our path is maybe not for you, but it might give you an idea, or it might give you some tips or some tricks or things like that you can just say, okay, well, that didn't work for them, so I'm going to just, try something else, right? Pivoting, maybe your new mantra, one day at a time might be your new saying. All those things have helped us navigate this difficult journey. But anyhow, so we get there, and my husband and my oldest son flew in for the first 2 weeks we spent together. And then they left, and I stayed with Declan, and we lived in a residence inn for the next 4-5 weeks. And we did see improvement in Declan. There's no doubt we saw a little bit of improvement in his engagement, his eye contact, just his overall presence. No words. But we were not set up with false expectations. We were set up with realistic expectations. The ladies at the MERT facility at the Brain Treatment Center were so kind to Declan, so kind to me. At this point now, I am very obviously pregnant, and it was just such a stressful situation. And if I could do it again, now knowing what I know, I wouldn't. But I will say, before we found Dr. Melillo, because we always believed that brain treatment and brain stimulation somehow was the key to finding the right path forward and our keys to progress. And we knew it wasn't ABA. We knew it wasn't speech or OT. We knew it was the brain. We just didn't know exactly whether it was MERT or something else. But so prior to finding Dr. Melillo, I was going to take him back to another facility for another round of MERT treatment. But this time it was in Charlotte, North Carolina, so a little bit closer, and we would have been able to come home on the weekends. My husband and I could have shared the duties of it. We were going to figure it out. And then, because I pivot and I'm always searching, I found this other company started by a husband and wife based in New Jersey that did something called PRTMS. And that really stimulated 5 to 6 sections of the brain versus the 2 that MERT stimulates. And so I thought, yeah, that sounds great. I mean, the more the better. And we actually had a consultation set up with them. And, same, I was going to move to New Jersey with Declan for 6 weeks, and we were going to be apart, and it was going to be terrible. But we felt like it was the right thing for Dec. And so my husband and I were willing to do it. And then fast forward to finding Dr. M on a podcast, and we just met with him, and both my husband and I felt like he was the right fit. And so we then pivoted again, all within a very short window of time. That was MERT, PRTMS, and now Melillo method. And it was the right choice for us. Now again, that my heart and my mind always stay open to other modalities and other complementary activities that we can add to Declan's plate. One other thing we're doing with Declan is what's called RPM, or rapid prompting method, where we use a letter board to get him to spell things. One of the ideas and the guiding principles of Dr. Melillo's is that, while there is this very significant imbalance in the brain from the left side to the right or vice versa, whatever side is dominant is genius level. And that was life-changing, truly. I mean, that truly is life-changing, because we always looked at Declan as having a significant cognitive deficiency, delay, whatever you want to call it. I mean, you would ask him to do something so simple like turn on a light, and there was nothing. You got nothing back. And so, we of course thought he just really doesn't have any comprehension. There's not much there. And that was very scary. And so prior to that, our ABA lead therapist had said one day, he's so smart. And, at this point, we've been working with them for a little bit, but she goes, no, Diane, he's so smart. She goes, I don't know how he knows the things that he's showing me he knows. And it was through pictures and point to this, point to that. And, I just started crying because it was the first time I had ever heard someone say he's so smart. And, okay, it's in there, right? Like that gives you the hope that it's in there. We just need to figure out the way to get it out of him, whether it's through vocal communication or an AAC device where he spells and types things out, whether it's through RPM, it doesn't matter. But to know that it's in there and he just can't get it out was, again, just life changing. And so when we met Dr. Malillo, and that, my husband and I were sitting with him in his office, and he goes, let me just tell you, he goes, Declan is smarter than all three of us combined. He's like, his left side is so dominant and so strong. He's like, but his right side is basically like offline. It's like not functioning. And so again, we're working so hard to stimulate that right side and get it to where both hemispheres are talking to each other in an appropriate way to get out these things. And that is just really exciting because there is reason to have hope, not only from the progress, but the research that Dr. M has done. And and that has set me on a path to just reading peer-reviewed papers. I am no doctor. And so a lot of those things make zero sense to me. They go over my head, especially when we are talking about the brain and the brain function and how it all works together. We joke, like, never did we think like neuroplasticity would be in our vocabulary the way it is. And never did I think I'd be sitting here doing this podcast talking about it. But that's our journey, and that's where we are. And so, we've just decided to embrace it and to go for it. And that's what we just continue to do every day. So thanks for your time. I'm really excited to continue this conversation. Please reach out. I've set up a website, I set up an email, declansautismjourney@gmail.com. I would love feedback, questions, conversation. That is one of the main goals of this podcast. So thank you for your time, and I look forward to the next episode.